Today is Monday, February 10th. This Committee of Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is called to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Here. Thank you. We have two guests that'll join us, and I want to always make sure we hear guests first. And first, if we could have the team from the MLK project that will come up with the, I believe, economic development is helping them. And this is ordinance number 1116-2021 by council members B. Jones, Brancatelli, Kelly, by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the mayor and the Commissioner of Purchases and Supplies to acquire the Martin Luther King Jr. High School and property located at 1651 East 71st Street for future redevelopment for the development of Department of Community Development to convey the property to Structures Unlimited LLC or their designee, and to enter into an agreement between the city and the developer. Who's preparing this on behalf? Okay, Ms. Andrzejewski.
Thank you,
right.
Chair.
And I believe that the first thing we're going to have to do is probably reassign the members, because a lot of these members are not here right now.
True.
Okay?
Yes, we've been
So once you
working.
do that presentation, then I'll make sure that Councilwoman House Jones and myself are added as co-sponsors.
Perfect. Thank you, Council President. Thank you for having us. I'd like to start by introducing our guests, Kareem Abdus-Salam and Stephanie Cole, who are with the development team. We have a couple brief slides to walk you through what this legislation is proposing, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Salam to walk us through details about his development firm. So this legislation, again, will allow the city to accept property from the school district, which has been vacant since 2020, and then subsequently allow the city to enter into a development agreement with the developer, Structures Unlimited, followed by transfer of the property. Briefly, I wanted to highlight the property that we're looking at. So the former Dr. MLK Jr. High School site is located in the Huff neighborhood in Cleveland Ward 7. It's located at 1651 East 71st Street. The property is approximately 11 acres, and it's bounded by Lexington Avenue to the north, East 73rd to the east, Huff Avenue to the south, and East 71st to the west. We have been working closely with the neighborhood planner, Kim Scott, through the Near East design review process on this project as well. Here, I just want to highlight a couple kind of benchmarks that we've gone through since starting this project with Structures Unlimited in 2021. So again, this really came out of a partnership with the Cleveland Metropolitan School District to help them or collaboratively work with them on redevelopment opportunities for some of their surplus real estate. Again, the school closed in 2020, and in 2021, we in the city partnered with CMSD on a collaborative disposition process to identify future uses for some of their vacant sites. Through issuing a joint request for qualifications to identify real estate development partners. This site in particular is located in one of the form-based code pilot areas. The project does already have conceptual approval from the local design review body as well as from Cleveland Planning Commission. We have been working closely also with Famicos Foundation. They've been a participant in the project conceptualization since we started this process, and they've also assisted with community engagement sessions as recently as, I believe it was last week that we were meeting at the Fatima Center in Huff, just a block and a half from the site. A couple other quick items is the project team will be responsible for designing, constructing, and maintaining a public amenity space that has been really iteratively and collaboratively developed in partnership with community residents. And then, of course, all city design requirements and regulations will apply. So with that, I want to give Kareem an opportunity to talk us through a little bit more about Structures Unlimited and kind of paint the picture of their concept for the site.
Good afternoon, council members, President Griffin, rest of the council board members. My name is Kareem Abdus-Salam. I am the managing member of Structures Unlimited, which is a development firm out of DC and Florida. We've been in business 30 years. This June will be 30. One of the things that I wanted to highlight in terms of our history is that we've transformed many communities, especially communities that are in challenging areas in Prince George's County, in Florida, as well as in Westchester County, New York. I am happy to be here. We were here last week. I see some of the familiar faces, but I wanted to kind of just talk a little bit about the program, what we're attempting to do with the city's support and the school district's support, but most importantly, with the support of the community. We've had no less than 6 community meetings. They've been iterative, they've been challenging, to say the least. When our first design was developed, the city as well as the community wanted to see a different presentation, but not only just a different presentation, they wanted to see a more livable community. And so we actually rose to the call to do that. We'll show you just an overview in a minute, but I wanted to just thank Trudy and also CSMD, Karen Thompson, for being a stalwart and making this thing finally get to the end of the day. And also, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Councilmember Stephanie House Jones, who's been very supportive. You want to go next slide? We have many slides, but not to take up too much of your time. This is just the aerial view. If you look at the 12 o'clock area, that is Lexington. To the left is 71st. To the right is 73rd. And the bottom is, Huff. And one of the things that we are doing in the first phase, it'll be over 4 phases. The first phase is going to be the demo of the school, which is 160,000 square foot Martin Luther King School to be demoed, and the removing of the sewer and water pipes in the building underground. We also will be doing a remediation if there's any asbestos in the building, so we want to make sure that the citizens are protected. One of the concerns that the citizen had was to see and make sure there was not too much noise, and so we're addressing that situation as well. And the second phase will be putting in the infrastructure. So it'll be sewer, water, lights, everything will be underground. It wasn't a question that was asked of us last week. Was there any aerial wires? And everything will be underground. And that we're trying to strive for a LEED Gold designation for this site. And if you look in the middle, that used to be where the school sits, but that's Quimby that was vacated many years ago when they built the school. We want to reopen it, and we want to make it where it's not a transportation access, but it'll be an access where we can have venues that will be there. We have an amphitheater. We have a quarter-acre tract that's surrounding the interior of the perimeter. But the reason for Quimby is that it designates and it separates the townhouse for sale product, which is 96 units. We've dedicated at least 20 of those to the seniors that have articulated that they would like to have ownership because the units that they're living in the community now are 2 levels, and a lot of times they can't negotiate those stairs. So those will be 1-level townhouses for the seniors that desire to purchase those. In addition to that, and I'll conclude, is that the bottom is the multifamily component. It's been really stressed to us that they want to see commercial activity, not heavy commercial, but light. As we said last week, we are in negotiations with 2 credit unions. We feel credit unions are more amenable to citizens as opposed to banks. And we also will have some food items that will be sold there. But also, we're going to make sure that it's for and people keep saying, is it affordable housing? Is it LIHTC? No, it's going to be market rate. And so we feel very happy about that. And we also think that it will drive people to live there and live, work, play, and recreate. And so if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you. First thing I want to make sure, and this is the attorney as well, I know that there are former council members that are a part of this legislation. Councilmember Bashir Jones, Councilman Brancatelli, and Councilman Kelly. Do we need to actually replace those with the present council members, which would be Councilwoman House Jones, Councilman Hairston, and Councilman Griffin. So we can't. So we got to move it forward under a certain. But we can add to those. Okay, got you. That's why I wanted to make sure we got a clarification on.
Kevin said that's accurate.
That's the accurate. Okay, so if you could you make sure that myself, Councilwoman House Jones, and is Mr. Hairston, does he want to be added as a co-sponsor as well? So could you add us three, the DPS chair, myself, as well as Councilwoman House Jones? Okay, thank you. Just a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
How many units will it be?
It will be 200 approximate units because we're going through the final site plan. So it'll be approximately 225 multifamily units, and it'll be approximately 100 townhouses or for sale units on the northern side.
So these wouldn't be single family, they'll be
Townhouses.
multi-unit townhouses.
Right.
Okay, but it'll be a total of about 200. So this might be like another sort of Lexington Village kind of.
We've looked at the opportunity to actually have density, but not to be too dense where it becomes, the first iteration that we did was extremely dense, and we had to ratchet it back. I mean, it was not only dense in size, but dense in number. But we think within the form-based code, this is more than amenable for that code. And it's gone through 3 iterations, and it's also been approved in the neighborhood planning. So we feel that that's something that we can manage.
Do you plan on owning it and managing the property and everything?
Absolutely.
Reason that I asked that question is because a lot of developers, they develop these properties, they get them up and running, we provide subsidies, we provide help, we give tax abatements, they hold on to them for 10 or 15 years. Then when it comes time to do the maintenance or whatever else, then they offload them to some private entity, LLC or whatever else, and then they do a very poor job of maintaining and keeping these properties. So one of the things that we're going to really look at is trying to figure out how we can put stop gaps in place
Understood.
to stop allowing that kind of transition to take place.
So, and let me respond, if I may, Council Chair. If you look at, when you get a chance, if you look at our website, Structures Unlimited LLC, we've developed over 10,000 student housing units, over 1,500 single-family homes, and over 500 multifamily. None of those units are in disrepair. We own 90% of them in partnerships, and so your point is spot on, because most developers, as you say, they get it, they flip it, take a fee, and they walk.
Yeah.
That's not what we do.
And I'm glad to hear that. I would hope that through our chair as well as Mr. Titron, that we look at ways to try to prevent that from happening, because the more that I look at properties, I look at as soon as they hit that 10 or 15 year mark,
Right.
they get whatever they can as far as equity out of the property, flip it to somebody else, and then they do a poor job of maintenance and upkeep.
Understood.
And we want to start trying to avoid that.
And you should.
Okay.
Yep.
I have, before I go to the dean, Councilman Hairston, did you have any remarks regarding this property?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. DPS committee did pass this with full support. A great project, as we hear from Structures Unlimited, and we look forward to supporting their efforts here. It is a beautiful space here. Like they said, they went through several renditions to get to where they are. And I'm positive that the community is very supportive and are thankful for the developer to change what they initially wanted to bring, but rather put what they wanted to see here in this neighborhood. And so we always appreciate developers like yourself, who is not just about what they want to put in someone else's community, but rather what the people who live there wants to see in their community. And so we thank you and we appreciate your support, fully support, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Michael Palencia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The administration. Just some clarification here, because I'm trying to jog my historical memory here. I was on the impression that once the school was closed, it was sold. Educate me.
Through the chair to Councilman Polensek, the school district is required by state law to offer all closed school buildings to charter operators, which they've done. And after that, we have the opportunity to partner with them. So that is why this legislation will add us to the chain of title. And then we've gone through this redevelopment, public, transparent redevelopment process where we're able to select a developer.
But I thought the building was sold prior to any transfer or potential transfer to the city.
This property is still owned by the Cleveland Metropolitan School District.
Completely, 100%.
Yes.
Okay.
And they were here at the table with us for the Development Planning and Sustainability Commission meeting
Okay.
last week.
And this is one of 12 former school buildings that they presently have?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. Okay. Are any of my former colleagues, I want to repeat this, and I want a straight answer. Are any of my former colleagues a part of the LLC or investment?
You're speaking of Structures Unlimited? Absolutely not. None of your previous colleagues or no one in Cleveland is part of this project,
Okay, and that's on the record.
on the record.
So I just want to make it clear, I don't want to have to find out down the pike here that former members of this body are principals, are participants in this project.
Absolutely not.
Okay, that's what I need to hear. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick follow-ups. The good thing I like about this is no taxpayer dollars, if I'm understanding correctly.
Correct.
Are being utilized in order to demolish this building.
Correct.
Which would be a pretty hefty sum. I
$1.1 million.
How much?
1.1 to be exact.
So $1.1 million that we're saving the taxpayers that would be done by the developer. I
That
wanna
is
make sure we
correct.
Clarify that.
That
right?
is correct.
Okay. The other thing that I want to make sure I understand, were any swaps involved? A lot of times when we swap CMSD properties, they oftentimes want other properties in addition.
That's correct, Council Chair. I'm sorry, I'm still getting used to that. No swaps were involved in this transaction.
Okay.
There will be a direct sales proceeds to CMSD through this sale.
Thank you. And I know how sensitive it is to ever venture into another council person's ward, but I would dare to say and ask the question, are all of these market rate? There is no percentage, no small percentage that is affordable or anything else? Could you give me that stack? Because one of the things that everybody always has concern about whenever you put market rate products, I think we need all kinds of products,
Right.
especially affordable, but also, I know that we're doing modular houses and other things, as well as habitat, senior living. But can you help me understand what how some of the people that live in that neighborhood might have an opportunity to
Sure.
live in those properties?
So let me address that, and I want to just throw out a moniker that you've heard, but you may not clearly be used to. And when you say affordable housing, I don't use that word. It's housing that's affordable. Because when you say affordable housing, it has a bad picture. If you say it to anyone, they're going to think it's African Americans, Hispanics that can't afford homes, that live on subsidized vouchers. That's not affordable housing. That's not what I call affordable housing. That's just segmenting a different part of a population. So housing that's affordable, I may not be able to afford the house that you live in, you may not be able to afford the house that I live in, but all of these units will be market rate. We also heard some concerns from the residents that they want to be able to live in this community. They don't want to be priced out. And so the question came up, how do you keep that tax base from going out the roof? That's a state issue. But Councilmember House Jones did say at this meeting last week, and also in the meeting with the community, that she will do her best to try to negotiate that so people who live in the community don't get outpriced in terms of their taxes are concerned. But in terms of the cost, we said at the meeting publicly, is the houses will be various sizes, from 1,500 to 2,200 square feet for the townhouses, and they will go from $220 to $315,000.
Well, first of all, thank you, and I agree with you. If you talk to 10 people and ask for a definition of affordable housing or housing for that's affordable or low-income housing, you'll get 25
Different answers.
So I've been struggling with that myself. I do think what you're talking about is tax relief or loop legislation at the state level.
Right.
That is very essential to some people who have growing communities that are experiencing gentrification in places like University Circle, Little Italy, Ohio City, downtown, trying to make sure that people that have been long-term residents there, that we have incentivization for them as well.
Exactly.
That we don't see their taxes going up. Now, it's a chicken and an egg theory because oftentimes it goes from, if I live in a neighborhood for a long time, I would tell you that my property probably appreciated about $20,000 in the last 5 years just by the development that we've
Right.
seen in the community that I represent alone. So I often tell people that there's a chicken and an egg theory
Correct.
to that because sometimes long-term homeowners that are looking to try to get more equity out of their homes need their properties to appreciate, which is why you need these kind of
That's
comps.
right.
So
That's right.
trying to find that balance, many of us have literally been learning on the fly, but we just want to make sure we do whatever to mitigate any potential damage or harm to our residents.
I appreciate that.
And that was all me stalling so that the council person for the area, if she wants to give any feedback, if Councilwoman House Jones would like to give any feedback on this.
Yes, thank you, Council President. So as our city representative and the team from Structures Unlimited have shared, this has definitely been a process. And so we're looking forward to continuing on to be able to provide a diverse pool of housing in our community. A couple of things when we talk about how are we going to work to ensure that our legacy residents are able to continue to live here in the community. You all know that we are consistently working with the State House on legislative fixes to, again, really try to get to like a stopgap of people's properties taxes, but we know that is consistent work that is being done over the years in the state of Ohio. In addition to that, Ward 7 is embarking on a journey of economic empowerment for residents. We are looking for, hopefully, is around 6 entities or so where over the next years, because again, this development project, we're talking about 4 years out, give or take. So we're not going to wait 4 years to then try to work on people being in a position to purchase a home. We're starting the work now, right? And that is the thing where we are really trying to work on not just a singular person buying a home, but bringing, those real concepts of communal living, right? Where you have literally the intergenerational or whatever family makeup you have coming together to purchase and having ownership in something versus some of the things that you might find now is that you have a grandmother here in this home, but a sibling, or a child, they're here and the grandchild here paying rents in places that are not up to par our idea, but being able to bring the resources together to be able collectively have something to be able to reinvest back into community and have a level of wealth building that we know has truly been destroyed as a result of the foreclosure crisis, pandemic, all of these things rolled together. So that is the approach that we are taking in Ward 7, and we look forward to seeing the results of how they will unfold as this project and many more, as we have more announcements to come about the development that's happening in Ward 7. So I thank you all so much, and hopefully the committee will support it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1116-2021 stands approved. Please sign on. And Councilwoman, we did add you, me, and Councilman Hairston as co-sponsors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and we wish you the best. All right, we have another guest. If they can come up, this is the guest with Economic Development and Public Health, Councilman McCormick. This is ordinance number 45-2025 by Council members McCormick, Conwell, Hairston, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Health to transfer property located at 4242 Lorraine Avenue to the control, possession, and use of the Department of Community Development and Economic Development, authorizing the sale or lease of the property to Penrose Holdings or its designee for future redevelopment, and authorizing the Directors of Public Health, Community Development, and Economic Development and Penrose Holdings to enter into a development agreement relating to this ordinance. I believe Community Development, and do we have a representative from Penrose here? Thank you. Who will be leading us off? Will it be always in rank or director? Okay.
Trudy's doing a fabulous job, and I'm here to
Thank you.
support her.
Hello
Appreciate it.
again. Thank you. Director Hernandez, thank you for your support throughout this process. I'd like to also introduce Jeff Mills with Penrose Development, who will help walk through this brief presentation with us. Just as we get started, again, we're here to walk through ordinance number 42, 2025, which will allow us to enter into a development agreement and ultimately site control for the former McCafferty Health Center, or for the McCafferty Health Center site in Ohio City. The city-owned site specifically that we're working on is 4242 Lorraine Avenue. I want to give a quick little shout out to the asset redevelopment team, who has done an excellent job in facilitating this RFQ process. We are currently partnering with the Cleveland Department of Public Health, who has operated about 25% of this building for the past several years. They'll be relocating their services nearby to more efficiently meet client and service needs. And that gave us an opportunity to be proactive about figuring out this future of this site and put the publicly owned property back into productive reuse. So in that vein, we partnered with Councilman McCormick, Ohio City Inc., several other departments at the city to issue a request for qualifications process in the fall. And through that process, we were able to identify Penrose Holdings LLC for the purposes of redeveloping this site into affordable housing. The redevelopment will also include ground floor nonprofit or social service uses that are helping to be defined through a community input process. We actually have another community engagement meeting this evening in partnership with Ohio City Inc. I think that will be the third, in addition to meetings with community block clubs and individual stakeholders in the area. And then through the RFQ process, we also, of course, highlighted that the firm will need to share their commitment to Cleveland small business, minority small business enterprises, female business enterprises through the course of developing this process. I'll highlight just briefly, in the words of our public health director, he often shares that housing is health, and we absolutely share that sentiment in community development. We believe that providing high-quality housing choice for all Clevelanders is a key component of equitable development, and by our definition, equitable housing opportunity means we need to both maintain, create, and preserve opportunities for residents to not pay more than 30% of their income on housing. Here, we're just showing data from the American Community Survey that indicates that in the census tract where this site is located, nearly 40% of all renter households are paying 30% or more currently of their income on rent, and that percentage increases to 45 and 52% in adjacent census tracts. So we're really excited to help fill at least a small portion of that need through this project. And then just quickly as I wrap up, I'll share that we did, in advance of releasing this request for qualifications, partner with Ohio City Inc. on a community value survey that specifically worked with stakeholders including May Dugan, the Westside Catholic Center, the Young Latino Network, and the Spanish American Committee to help circulate this survey to their clients and community residents. And then, of course, that just lays the foundation for the continued engagement work that will occur throughout this project conceptualization and ultimately development. So with that, I will pass it over to Jeff to highlight a couple key components of the proposed project.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to see your faces again and to be here to introduce this project to the Finance Committee. It's a tremendously impactful project, and we're so proud to be a part of it. My name is Jeff Mills. I'm the Director of Development for a company called Penrose, and we are proud to be partnered with the Ohio City Incorporated to redevelop the McCafferty site, which we have, through lots of community engagement, determined that the population that we seek to serve is an elderly population. It's 55 and over, and the sort of income levels that we're seeking to serve are between 30% AMI and 70% of AMI. So we believe that the site will be able to support a 72-unit senior building, and we are currently feverishly putting together our low-income housing tax credit application, which will be submitted at the end of this month. So we are very excited about that. As it relates to the project timeline, this this ordinance will result in site control for the purposes of the low-income housing tax credit application submitted at the end of this month. And then we cross our fingers and knock on wood and hope that in May of this year, we are awarded a 9% LIHTC award. If that is the case, and we are hopeful that it will be, from June until January of next year, we'll be doing a lot of work on design, and we hope to have a financial closing in February of next year, with construction completion by mid-27. So that is our project timeline.
All right, thank you. I'll start out with Councilman, I do have a miscellaneous, but I want to start out, if I could, with Councilman Hairston and then McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. President. DPS fully supports this piece. The group came and shared a very detailed presentation with us from start to where they are today. We fully supported the piece, and we asked the committee for support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had an extensive conversation at DPS, as the chairman noted, about this piece. The community has started talking about the future of this property a long time ago under the former mayor. I think since I started, and I've been on for 9 years, and I'm sure they were talking about it before that. So, long time conversation in the community. It is very important to the neighborhood, Mr. Chairman, that this publicly owned land be utilized for affordable housing. So, as we went into the process with the Bibb administration, we made that clear, and they, of course, reciprocated that interest in affordable housing on the site. Mr. Chairman, I think it's also important to note that this is going to be kind of targeted towards senior affordable housing, as Councilwoman Santana Spencer and others can attribute. On the near west side, especially, we're seeing, and I know we're seeing it on the east side as well, challenges, especially with seniors, either maintaining homes or dealing with increased values in property taxes is a big issue. So we are hoping, Mr. Chairman, that this can provide an opportunity for all folks, but also folks that want to stay in the neighborhood but downsize and create something that's more manageable for themselves. So, a really great project. We also, discussed, Mr. Chairman, in the committee, that not only is the units be affordable from a price point, but this is on a 24/7 transit line. There is a Metro Health Community Health Center a few blocks away. There's a Metro Health dental office a few blocks away. Also, this is either walkable or a quick transit ride to a Dave's supermarket. So there's a lot of amenities in the neighborhood, Mr. Chair, that the future residents of this can enjoy. Special thanks, Trudy and Penrose and the committee and director for advancing this work. I also want to thank Ohio City Inc. and then Director McNair, who's here prior to his role at the city, was integral in his previous life in making sure that this project came to fruition, Mr. Chairman. And then also, as a note, as was kind of alluded to, the other services that were located in this building, Metro Health. So for folks to understand, Metro Health vacated the building but built a much larger and expansive health center just a couple blocks away. So we're really happy that those services have remained in the neighborhood. The City of Cleveland's services will be moving to the Clark Fulton neighborhood. Just a quick bike ride or bus ride down the road. So that's really exciting. So those services will be retained in the near west side as well. So again, we're retaining those health services, or in the case of Metro Health, those were expanded, and getting a lot of new affordable housing on site, Mr. Chairman. So a very thorough process, a lot of community engagement here, but really happy that this project is underway and that we're able to onboard high quality affordable housing for our folks in the community, a neighborhood that desperately needs more of it. So again, a lot of work has gone into this. I want to thank everyone that's been involved. And again, the neighborhood's going to be excited to see this affordable housing come online. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sounds like a very, very good project. Sound like you guys really worked it together. So I think we'll move it forward. But I do have a quick miscellaneous, if I could, for Penrose. How many other properties do you own in the city of Cleveland? And do you do the management and development of the properties?
Great question, sir. We own St. Luke's. We, in partnership with the Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority, have the Cedar and Sankofa redevelopment in Central, and we are working on the Warner and Swayze project right now. So we don't own Warner and Swayze yet, but we're hopefully by the end of this year that project will be off the ground. So that's two that are owned, one in the pipeline, and then this one. We own and manage our buildings. Yes.
Okay. I'd like to have your number if I could.
Sure.
I've had some, I try hard not to hold a company accountable that all of their projects would be the same, but we've had some serious challenges with the St. Luke's property that I
Okay.
would love to make sure that we have a conversation for.
Yes.
A lot of it is some external around some safety issues, but then also some internal structural things, and sometimes it's harder to get to the corporate office, so it's good
yeah.
to see you here today. If I can make sure that I have your information so that
Absolutely.
we can have a very good discussion about St. Luke's when you get a chance.
100%. Yes, sir.
Okay? And if you have a card, I would love to get yours as well.
I have an electronic card, but I can email you.
We can connect that, that'd be great, okay? All right?
Thanks,
Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 42-2025 stands approved. Thank you.
Thank
Please
you.
sign off. Thank you. All right, we're going to move to economic development. Economic development. And the first piece is ordinance number 95-2025 by council members McCormick, Hairston, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the mayor and commissioner of purchases and supplies to acquire and reconvey properties presently owned by TDG Franklin North LLC and or its designee located at 3210 Franklin Boulevard, Cleveland, Ohio, 44113 for the purpose of entering into the claim of title prior to the adoption of tax increment financing legislation authorized under Section 5709.41 of the revised code for the Franklin Yards North project. Director McNair.
Thank you, Council President, members of the committee. This went to the Development, Planning, and Sustainability Committee last week, and so we've narrowed this presentation down a little bit for you. But very excited to be here today, joined by Henry Epistel, General Counsel for the Dalla Group, as well as Bobby Bruno from our office, who has done an awful lot of work. This is the chain of title legislation for tax increment financing. Actually, there are two pieces of legislation in front of you. We're going to kind of talk through them together.
So how about I do this? I apologize. How about I read both of them into the record so then we could actually deliberate on both of them as your presentation, and then you can go from there, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, so ordinance number 96-2025, which is a companion piece to ordinance number 95-2025 by council members McCormick, Hairston, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the mayor and the commissioner of purchases and supplies to acquire and reconvey properties presently owned by TDG Franklin Realty LLC and or its designee located at 3105 Franklin Boulevard, Cleveland, Ohio, 44113, for the purpose of entering into the chain of title prior to the adoption of tax increment financing legislation authorized under Section 5709.41 of the revised code for the Franklin Yards South project. Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. So the Dalla Group, and I said this the last one, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of different developers throughout the city of Cleveland. I feel that the Dalla Group does as high quality work as anyone that you're going to come in contact with. If you've had the opportunity to see Worthington Yards, downtown Cleveland, or Tinnerman Lofts in Ohio City, they do great work on historic properties. So as you look at the work that they're proposing in front of us here, this is between West 31st Street and West 32nd Street. On the south side of the street, it is a former mansion next to an old convent that have been vacant for approximately a decade that are sitting there that they are looking to fully renovate and bring back to 38 residential apartments. And then on the north side of the street, there is a surface parking lot that has been vacant and abandoned for the better part of 30 years. There they will be building 29 market rate apartments ground up from there, mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. There's also a small, around the corner on West 32nd Street, a small kind of red, called the Shed, the Red Shed. Very precise name there, right, which has the ability to be a small commercial piece, which has the ability to create upwards of 3 jobs and look $80,000 in annual payroll taxes. So ultimately, again, when you look at the value provided in here, Dalla Group will be investing nearly $20 million into these 2 projects, bringing vacant properties and vacant land into 67 units. In turn, that will generate about $130,000 annually. It'll go back into the tax increment financing. But again, because they're investing that $20 million, right, ultimately this is going to generate about $3.7 million for the Cleveland Metropolitan School District over the lifetime of that TIF. Along with those new income taxes, right, that is a net increase of $3,774,727 to the city of Cleveland that would not exist if not for this investment. Additionally, the work that they are doing, right, so this is below the $20 million threshold, but they do have a community benefits agreement that Director Mitchell has signed off on through OEO. And you can see the impact of that up there, but this hits all the minority, Cleveland small business, Cleveland resident requirements in here with the goals that they have, mentor protege, right? So again, this has been fully vetted and agreed to by the Office of Equal Opportunity. This is a site that Councilman McCormack knows extraordinarily well. It has been vacant for a real long time. I think all the residents are extraordinarily excited to see something finally coming into here. And again, we do have Mr. Apicel from the Dalla Group for any questions related to the project.
Thank you. Councilman Hairston, this was vetted and heard in DPS. Do you have any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we heard both pieces also in DPS as well, and we fully support. We got a chance to, it was another slide on here that had the photos. Go back.
You want that or community benefits,
No,
Councilman?
go back to the video. I mean, it's not important. I just wanted to point to it, but there was photos that show the current conditions of both properties and what has sat vacant for a very long time, and now a group has come in and are going to not only repurpose some of those, but also provide some new construction components to that neighborhood. And just to see, when you look at these photos, it's telling just about where our neighborhoods were, where they are now, and just to see a lot of the growth that has happened all across the city. And so I fully support it, Mr. Chair. Ask the committee for support. The councilman is working hard on this along with the team that is here, and so we ask the committee for support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilman McCormick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the chairperson of DPS for an extensive hearing at this. And Mr. McNair, Director, if you could introduce your staff here as well, just as a part of protocol. I've started to work with him a little bit, but just so folks know who he is.
Through the chair, Councilman McCormick, this is Bobby Bruno, one of our new staff people that we've been thrilled to have on board.
Oh, this guy, okay.
That's my point. Got to introduce him when he comes to the table so people know who he is. Okay. So appreciate his work. We've worked together on a couple projects thus far. So, Chair, as has been noted before, this is currently, and not only is it a blighted parking lot, it's been closed to the public for many, many, many years. So it didn't even provide the benefit of people being able to use it. And this is a corner that has had a lot of problems with it. These were kind of fenced off, chained off areas that we had public safety issues over the years with, crime issues over the years with. So really happy to see that the new development is going in on this one. The building that is currently there is an older historic building. Again, has been sitting vacant, kind of rotting, and has been a nuisance in the community for quite a few years. So really excited to see new life move into these buildings, to the building and then in the new construction, and really revitalizing an old but beautiful historic building and mansion as well into a new use. Mr. Chairman, again, these have been sitting open and vacant and pretty much open for a long time. So glad to see that new investments coming here. Really excited about it. I reflect the director's comments about the Dallard Group and their quality of work. I've also visited their projects within my ward, and that is, very much holds true. So, Chair, excited about this redevelopment and fully support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Seems like an exciting development. Looking forward to it, and please keep us abreast. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 95 and 96-2025 stands approved. Please sign on.
Thank you all.
Oh, you did? Yeah, I missed it.
All right, let's move to finance. Or, hold up, you know what? Let's do economic development. Who's handling the TIF adjustment? Okay, please join us at the table if you could. And I want to make sure that Councilman Harrison, if he could look at this amendment that was recommended to me.
Sure.
If they could pass this down to him.
Thank you, sir.
Just want to make sure I get his information. This is ordinance number 45-2025 as amended by council members Bishop, Harrison, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to supplement ordinance number 746-2024 passed August 7th, 2024 relating to the Bedrock 41 TIF district by adding 3 new whereas clauses and sections 9A, 9B, 9C, 9D, 9E, and 9F to repeal Section 9 and to amend Section 10 relating to authorizing the Director of Economic Development to enter into a tax increment financing agreement and the Director of Capital Projects to enter into one or more construction management agreements with Cleveland LD LLC for various public improvements and authorizing other agreements and documents. And the amendment is as follows, and then Councilman Harrison will let me know if he has any other language that we need to consider. But it says there is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. In Section 3, in Section 3, add new Section 9A, Paragraph 3, Line 7, strike 100% and insert 90%. This was dated 1/17/24, signed by Stephanie Melnick, Chief Corporate Counsel. Is that amendment reflective of the discussion, Councilman Harrison?
It looks fine to me. This is what we discussed last week. I'll only add that we add on to this shall be subject to further legislative approval. So that way we will have input and know where the funds are going to be used and how they're going to be used, seeing that this is going to go to a fund established by the Director of Finance.
Okay, a motion has been put forth to amend ordinance number 45-2025. Just as clarification, this really is to try to make sure that we protect the neighborhood investment component. Am I right, Mr. Harrison?
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Harrison?
I'm sorry,
This is pretty much so that we can protect the neighborhood investment component, right?
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
An amendment and the motion has been put forward. Do I have a second to Councilman Harrison? Councilman Kevin Bishop seconds. Discussion, and Councilman Harrison on that discussion.
McCormack, I know I look a lot like Anthony. So, just to clarify, so this is for any of the neighborhood-based future funding would require legislative authority, is that correct? I'm trying to understand the amendment.
Councilman Harrison?
Yes, so I'm reading this amendment that was just given to me, and this goes back to our discussion last week at committee about the 10% and what it's going to be used for. So this establishes that, but this does not establish any guardrails around or any thoughts relating to how the money should be used in the neighborhoods. And for now, until we have a better, a more clear picture on how and where, how we want to use these dollars in neighborhoods, I suggest adding further legislative approval so that way we can ensure that it is used in the correct way that we see fit or between both the council and administration.
Got it. So this applies to the neighborhood?
Just the 10%.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Councilman Casey and Councilwoman Spencer.
Thank you. Just reiterating what Councilman Harris just said, this won't outline the amount that's spent in the neighborhoods, does it? Does it give a number?
No, because it will all depend on the appreciation and what the number might be, maybe a moving target.
Part of the CBA is upfront spending.
But the CBA, most of CBA is upfront spending, which that will be
Right.
outlined in the CBA. This makes sure that a portion of the full TIF, that we
Right.
actually have a component.
And within that, does it say anything about equity within the neighborhoods? Because, in light of what the mayor put out this weekend about his $25 million that he spent on the southeast side, and, rightfully so, Councilman McCormack always saying that downtown is a neighborhood, right? I mean, is there anything built into this to make sure that Clark Metro and Lee, Collinwood and Glenville or Cams or Bel Air Puritas or anything would ever receive a portion of this?
I think that's why Councilman Hairston has put this in place, so that that conversation comes back to council.
Okay.
So we can deliberate without the administration having the ability to just do it on their own.
All right.
That council as a body will be able to have a determination on where and how we believe it should be spent.
All right, okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Jenny Spencer.
Thank you, Council President. I know you're trying to take a vote on this amendment. It would have been my preference to hear the presentation, because what I'm looking for is the overall snapshot of the overall neighborhood investment holistically, because there's two parts. There's the CBA part, and then there's this piece about percentages as it relates to the TIF district. So I'm a little hesitant to vote on an amendment unless, I was hoping we would have that bigger, broader discussion about where we're landing with neighborhood investment prior to voting on either an amendment or the full piece. That would be my preference. I don't know if there's any comments or guidance.
So,
on
Council
that.
Lady, just, and I think that's kind of where Councilman Casey was going. I think because there is so much, we're always running against two things. This is kind of time-sensitive and cleanup language in order for us to be able to move forward with the TIF in general, okay? So there is some cleanup language that we have to do in order to be able to implement the TIF and move the TIF forward in general. Those are the improvements. Those are to guarantee and back up that capital projects is going to support the improvements and giving approval to economic development to move forward with the deal. The neighborhood investments and CBA is a broader conversation that, quite frankly, is a little bit more intimate, and that's the reason why I believe that Councilman Hairston is trying to carve out that 10% and have a CBA so that we can have a broader discussion on just that component to it. Now, I do plan on them having the broader discussion, but I do know that they also spent a significant time discussing this in DPS last week as well. So it's kind of like we're running up against two simultaneous things, but if I'm hearing Councilman Hairston's language in his amendment, it basically gives us the opportunity to come back to have that discussion as opposed to determine that today. Because that could end up being easily a 4-hour conversation on how we divide up that pie. That's the reason why we're trying to almost carve it out and kick it to a broader discussion on another day.
Councilwoman, you mind if I add into that?
Sure, I have a follow-up question, but Councilman Hairston has a point.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councilwoman. Just to add to that, also within our CBA, we have the Neighborhood Equity Fund that does not have guardrails as well, right? And so we also have to do that work to figure out what that looks like and how we move that forward. So, you know, we don't have a clear direction yet, but we're putting together the set-asides. We established the fund, but we have to establish the parameters of the fund. This carves out the 10%. Legislative approval will allow it to come back to us, so we will have input, and this gives us and buys the time to, like the Council President said, to figure out how we move forward, the way we move forward, and what that looks like.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Councilwoman?
Thank you. And let me add, I understand a lot of conversations, a lot of work has happened prior to coming to the table today. So I apologize that I'm playing catch up. I am not clear about the 10%. And so that kind of goes to my core issue of why I wanted to see the presentation, understand the overall snapshot on the neighborhood piece, because we really haven't talked about this TIF in a while, since last summer, right? And it's complicated enough that I certainly have tried to do my homework leading up to today. But so I understand that, and I really want to respect the work of our leadership and of our DPS chair proffering this amendment. I'm not quite clear on the 10%. At the same time, I also don't want to vote against an amendment without a little additional context. So I hope that makes sense. So I just feel like I'd like to hold the big picture before voting on an amendment.
Ms. Trevisano.
Chair Jessica Trevisano, Senior Advisor to the Mayor. Happy to go through the presentation at your
Please.
direction. But one thing I will say, just to maybe, I haven't read the amendment, but just to be very clear, Council, we set up the tool for the shorter shore TIF district to date. We need to come back to Council each time to use any of those proceeds in any specific way. So to date, we've come to Council, asked for 40% of those proceeds to be pledged towards a TIF district. What I'll talk about today is a very narrow set of circumstances where we could go up to 90% towards the riverfront public improvements. But that other 60%, the other 10%, whatever the timing is, all of that is still subject to legislative approval. Right. So I, again, don't know what's the details of the amendment, but I know that any additional dollars or any dollars that haven't been allocated are already subject to legislative approval.
Point on that, Councilman McCormick.
Thank you. I really appreciate that explanation and understanding it's up to further legislative approval. I do support Councilman Hairston's amendment, kind of really articulating that in the legislation. I think that's important. So I do want to, within the context, still, support Councilman's amendment, Chair.
Thank you. So we have we've had an amendment that have been moved and seconded. We have had discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, we have one
Thank you.
opposed. We have one opposed for this amendment, Councilwoman Spencer, and then we have the ayes, the rest ayes have it. Okay? Please move forward.
Sure. So this piece of legislation before you today does three key things. One, it clarifies that Bedrock and its subsidiaries are authorized to complete public improvements on behalf of the city as it relates to the Riverfront project. That's reconstructing roads adjacent to the Cavs Clinic facility, those types of projects. It clarifies that the 5 TIF extensions that were passed in December 2023 are part of the Shorter Quarter Shore TIF district. And then it states that if, starting in 2056, the city has not fulfilled its obligations to fund public improvements for the Riverfront project, the city may allocate up to 90% of the Shore to Quarter Shore TIF district to the Riverfront public improvements until the city's share of public improvements are complete. So this piece of legislation really speaks to 5 previous pieces of legislation. All of those are on the screen here in the packet in front of you. Those are pieces of legislation that were passed in June of 2023 and November of 2023. Both of those have to do with how the public improvements are delivered. The piece in November of 2023, 1299, 2023, is the piece of legislation that council passed to extend the TIFs, 5 TIFs. And then the ordinance 38/2024 is the ordinance establishing the TIF district. Again, that only established the TIF district, did not determine how those funds would be spent. And then the ordinance number 746/2024 is the piece of legislation that allows the Director of Economic Development to enter into a TIF agreement with Bedrock that both establishes the Bedrock TIF and speaks to that initial 40% commitment. Just as a reminder, this is what was in that 746/2024 piece. It establishes the Bedrock TIF, which is a 45-year non-school project TIF that starts in 2027. It also speaks to the CBA requirements for the Riverfront project and the CBA commitments made by Bedrock. And then it speaks to the Shorter Quarter Shore TIF district, saying that the city will commit up to 40% of the TIF district to riverfront public improvements, only public improvements, and only until the city's share of public improvements are paid, and that share is capped at $400 million, subject to some inflation.
And just if I could clarify real quick, that $25 million is literally a check that Bedrock is writing that will be every time that they go out for bonds every 3 years, that they would actually write a check for $5 million each time that they go out for bonding. And the reason that that's important, because if we didn't do it that way, then we may not see any neighborhood investment or get any improvements to the community for like another 20 to 25 years, waiting on that TIF to appreciate,
That's right, Council President.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. So these pieces, as I mentioned, sections 1 and 2 of this piece of legislation allows Bedrock to deliver certain public improvements on public property through a construction manager at risk agreement. These are the 3 pieces of prior legislation that are really being amended. Just for an example, these are the types of public improvements that we're talking about. Eagle Avenue Bridge that will go underneath the new Cavs Clinic facility, West 3rd. These are public improvements on public property that will be delivered through a construction manager at risk agreement. The second piece clarifies sections 4 and 5, clarifies that the TIF extensions are part of the Shorter Quarter Shore TIF district during their extension periods. This is a question that came up at DPS, so I made sure to have this time. These are the 5 extensions that were passed in late 2023 and their new end date. So each of those were extended for an additional 30 years. And then the chart to the right is just a reminder. We shared this with you all earlier when we talked about how the TIF grows. The idea behind the TIF is that as we make public improvements, property valuation, I have it in front of me if you want. Okay. The property values increasing the value of the TIF. This is a projection only out 40 years. The TIF district actually goes longer, but this is just a snapshot. It was going to be too wide for a larger amount. And then Section 3 as amended permits the city to allocate up to 90% of the TIF district value to reimburse the developer for outstanding public improvement costs owed by the city for those riverfront public improvements starting in 2056. That obligation would end when that $400 million cap was reached. And then this gets to your question, Council President. These are the commitments to neighborhoods that have already been spoken to as it relates to the Shorter Quarter Shore TIF. What we've spoken to is between 2024 and 2056, 40% of the Shorter Quarter Shore TIF district is pledged to the riverfront. That's all that's been legislated so far. And then from 2056 through 2075, up to 90% could be devoted to the riverfront, but only if the city has not met its obligations to pay for portions of the public improvements. And then Bedrock has made that $25 million commitment that you spoke to at certain project milestones to really accelerate when funding will be available for neighborhood investment. That's what I have. Happy to
First
answer
of all,
questions.
great presentation. This is some complicated stuff that a lot of people have spent a lot of man hours and man and women hours trying to understand. And I just want to reiterate, and I want to thank council, because one of the things that we negotiated, and I know he stepped out, Councilman Hairston really worked closely with me and Councilwoman Santana, as well as Councilman McCormick, is really spending a significant amount of time with the Bedrock team on how we can accelerate neighborhood commitments. We just didn't feel that it would have been good to try to do something like this. And I with all due respect to all of the downtown business owners, but we didn't want the community and the neighborhoods to eat last, which is the way that the original TIF was set up, that until it appreciated, we probably would not have seen any neighborhood investments until 2046, which neighborhoods can't wait that long for the type of investment. So what makes this unique is, for the first time, a developer is putting in their own private money to say, here's $5 million up front that they're putting from their private sector as soon as we issue the first bonds, that then this council can deliberate and determine how it's spent in neighborhoods throughout the city of Cleveland. So just so that everybody can understand the tremendous amount of negotiation to accelerate, I like how she put that, to accelerate neighborhood investment as opposed to waiting for 20 or 25 years, is what this council leadership team, as well as Councilman Hairston, really spending a lot of time working with Bedrock to accomplish. And then, as you can see, there's other things that they put in place to sweeten the pot with the community benefit agreement, like $5 million for the minority business enterprise money and other things for resident investment, as well as trying to make sure that there are affordable units that can participate when we do some of the vertical improvements as well. These TIF districts are only successful when you start to see vertical development. That's why it's important to get shovels in the ground quick, and that's why this is a time-sensitive piece, because we only start making the property appreciate and seeing that fund appreciate to make those improvements if we get more vertical construction. So just want to make sure that this council understands why there's so many moving parts to this, okay? All right, Councilman Hairston stepped out. I take it that any Councilwoman Spencer, did you have some questions? Councilwoman Spencer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I did have the benefit of and the privilege of hearing this in DPS already. I appreciate the additional information that was added to the presentation. Specifically, I'm looking at the commitment to neighborhood slide. I think that is my goal walking away from this vote today, is being really clear on that. And I think it's beneficial for all members to understand the neighborhood commitment piece. And so, Council President, you did a great job explaining the community benefits agreement and the how we're going to get that first $5 million at bond issuance, and then the additional 10 up to 15 for a neighborhood investment fund. I think my only question would be, looks like there's, and this might be more towards you, Council President, or possibly Councilman Hairston, we haven't legislated the 2024 to 2056 at this point, beyond the 40%, right? That's the only thing that's known. So is there utility in being more explicit about a neighborhood carve-out from that tranche or whatever that period of time? And then I had remembered, and maybe I was mistaken, but I had remembered that somehow the number 20% had come to mind in terms of where we were with wanting neighborhood TIF proceeds to flow would be at about 20%. So those were kind of my dual questions. I know that this is a complex system and there are some unknowns, but really wanting to make sure that all of us are walking away with that real clarity on, because a lot of people have worked very hard on making sure there are neighborhood investments as an outcome to all of these moving pieces and parts.
Council Lady, for fear of not messing this up, I'm going to try.
Okay.
But I really wish that we would have had some time to spend with Mr. Titron and some of the technicians around this, and even Ms. Trevisano. If we would have just did this the traditional way, the 10% would have been all we would have been able to carve out at the end of the maturation, or at the end of that end, like 2040 or 2050, we would have only been able to carve out a very minimal amount from the actual entire project. So in addition to that 10%, the CBA, which gives us the ability to agree with the private sector to make the private investment, covers some of that as well. So basically, we tried to take a bite at the apple from two different ways. From the actual structural TIF and put 10% and carve that out, plus in order to accelerate neighborhood investment, get the CBA that is agreed upon in order to accelerate and make sure that we have more money within like the next 3 to 5 years to start making some immediate improvements and not wait until the neighborhood's 8 last. So it's kind of, we tried to come at this from like two different angles. I know I'm giving a layman's explanation, but I think you who know economic development deals probably are capturing some of what I'm saying, but I don't know if somebody else wants to articulate it better than I just did.
So I would add, Mr. Chair, you are right, and that is on the lines of what I explained last week, that, you know, you have the 10% here. We also have another way of obtaining dollars on the front end, and that is through our CBA with the developers, which is the funds that they're going to, the upfront check that they're going to write. And that's how we arrive at, you know, the investment for the neighborhood. So just echo you, Mr. Chair, you are correct, and I explained similar lines last week during DPS as well. So we're aligned in our thinking as relates to the investments for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Councilwoman?
Thank you. I'm clear on the CBA. I'm clear on that piece, on that upfront accelerating bite at the apple. I'm less clear about neighborhood proceeds as part of the TIF. For that reason, I'm not prepared to vote in favor of this piece today, and I apologize because I was hoping in the week between DPS and today I would catch up. But I really do respect that. And please do not take this as a sign of disrespect because I know leadership has worked hard on this. I'm just not prepared to vote in favor. I would have liked a little more information, a little more clarity around protecting some of the neighborhood dollars. Thank you.
Council Lady, we totally understand that's within your right, and that's why we always enjoy you asking the tough questions. I would ask if you, Ms. Trevisano, and some of the other team, because maybe some of us have had the opportunity to spend more time understanding the mechanics around this, and I think it would be helpful for you to have broader conversations. It's one of the reasons why we're not just trying to do it all at once, and why we're kind of taking chunks and portions at a time, because it gives us time to regroup, reset, and clarify some of the questions that you have. But we do know that in order for, you know, the developer, to continue to accelerate the TIF appreciation, they need to get the vertical development started. And if we continue to hold and not move forward, then, as you know, with any construction, it creates delays, and delays create more money, and more money creates more problems. So that's one of the reasons why I'm taking the chairman's lead on making sure that we are being very moving at a snail's pace, but at the same time, we do have to have some sense of urgency. But I totally understand you and your apprehension, and you have to definitely vote your conscience on this, and we'll go from there, okay? All right. Any other questions regarding 45-2025 as amended? Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 45-2025 as amended stands approved, but please mark if I believe Councilwoman Spencer would like to be marked as a no vote for Finance Committee. So please articulate that. And when it goes to the floor tonight, Councilwoman, could you please make sure you remind the staff that you are apprehensive and are a no vote until you get clarification, okay? Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Trevisan. And please, if you could, I know a couple of council members may need to have follow-up. And this is, I know some of us spent a tremendous amount of time with this, but if council members have any questions, I think this is a great presentation, but if you'd be willing to have that conversation with them. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. We'll go to port control, or let's do finance, get finance out the way, then we go to port control. Port control always goes fast, so that's why I like to say them, because They move right through their stuff like real quick. All right, finance. This is ordinance number 1321-2024 as amended by council members Casey and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance on behalf of the Office of Sustainability to enter into an agreement with Johns Hopkins University for the placement of 3 in-kind support staff members and funding to design, develop, and implement solutions to address climate change, inequity for a period of 3 years. This did have an amendment. There is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. 1, insert new section 4 to read as follows. Section, in quotation, section 4, that the Director of Sustainability shall provide biannual reports to council at the same time they provide the reports to the initiative. All reports required herein will be delivered electronically to the clerk of council and entered into the record as a communication referencing this ordinance. Number 2, renumbering existing Section 4 as new Section 5. This was dated 2/6/25, signed by Patricia McGinty Aston, Assistant Director of Law. Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul Barrett, Director of Finance. So this legislation is to enter into an agreement with Johns Hopkins University for placement of 3 support staff members. They'll work to reduce energy burden and incidences of lead poisoning throughout the city. There is no cost to the city related to these 3 positions, and a $120,000 grant will be used, $60,000 in year 1, $60,000 in year 2, related to funding for these positions. And I believe Director O'Keefe may have more information.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Director. Director O'Keefe, Sustainability and Climate Justice. This legislation, as Director of Finance said, is at no cost to the city for 3 positions in the mayor's office to support climate initiatives in the city of Cleveland, and was heard in Utilities Committee on Thursday.
All right. Just a couple of questions before I go to the sponsors of the legislation. How are they going to be deployed? I'm trying to understand how we're going to operationalize. We have a very large ecosystem that, quite frankly, Councilman McCormick and myself have been really engaged in over the last years. And I have to say that I'm a little disappointed in the lack of alignment that we're seeing coming in the lead space. So how are they going to be integrated with the external partners, and how does this fit with the lead czar that, and I'm not picking on anyone, but I don't even know if that position still exists, and where is it housed at? I know that it was announced when, several years ago, when the administration was looking at trying to tackle lead. I'm just really trying to understand how are we utilizing these folks. Happy to have them, but how are we utilizing them?
Sure, to the chair. So broadly, Bloomberg American Sustainable Cities is for 25 different cities in the United States. Each city gets to tailor the program a little bit to what it needs. In the city of Cleveland, there are a number of programs, as you've mentioned, around lead. We're looking at holistic, healthy housing, lead being a part of that, and energy efficiency being another part of that. When you touch a person's house or a household, really looking at that holistically is important. The way that this 3-person team would be deployed is to work with cabinet members who are already leading those initiatives to help accelerate those initiatives and deliver on them.
Thank you. I always like these fellas because they always come with a lot of creativity, a lot of best practices, so I think that they'll be a great asset. I just, at some point in time, and maybe this is a question better served for Councilman Conwell and Councilman Hairston, I just really would like to have a better understanding of how they fit into the ecosystem. I think that'll be great because I do think that they can bring a lot of added value, but I'm just not sure where we're at with lead. I mean, like I said, I don't even know who and if the lead czar even still exists, but I know that this administration originally said they were going to have a priority on lead, but now it just seems like it's lost in a lot of minutia trying to understand it. Okay?
So yeah, to the chair, we're happy to present to the council on this initiative, and we will be reporting to council twice a year.
Thank you. All right, this was heard in Utilities. Councilman Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was duly vetted and recommended for passage. The only question we had out of Utilities was whether these 3 fellows would be fall under the auspices of the Hatch Act, which we learned today that I think essentially they would. So there would be no question as to whether they would be here for any other reason except for what John Hopkins is bringing them here for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Kevin Conwell.
Thank you very much, CP. I would like to, when this is over with, sit down and talk with you guys and that you can meet with me. I echo the council president's words because, I'm just not a happy camper dealing with this issue right now, especially dealing with lead, because they don't execute well. They don't execute well at all. And I shouldn't have to be as a council member. I mean, that's the mayor's job and that's you guys' job to in administration to execute. But I got to step over there to make it happen. So I tell you what, when you finish, you leave the table, I'll give you my cell number and we will meet. And we will meet with Rebecca Moore as well, and we'll discuss it and talk about it. Okay?
Through the chair. Certainly, sir.
Yeah, I got to seek to understand it better, Mr. President.
Thank you. All right, any other questions regarding 1321-2024? Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1321-2024 stands approved. Please sign on. As amended. 1321-2024 as amended stands approved. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. The anchor leg. Department of Port Control. I'll read while he is on his way to the table. This first one is ordinance number 105-2025 by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to exercise the second option to renew lease agreement number CT 3001 LS 2023-010 with Prime Flight Aviation Services, Inc. for the lease of office space at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport to support wheelchair operations, ground handling, and maintenance services. Director.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. As described, Prime Flight, they are a service provider to a number of our airlines at Cleveland Hopkins. And what they do is provide wheelchair services, ground service equipment, maintenance, all those different airline support type services. They lease space at Cleveland Hopkins, approximately 500 square feet, and we have an existing lease with them, and we are looking to exercise the second option term of that lease. We have been satisfied with them as a tenant, and would like to continue our relationship with them.
Thank you, Councilman McCormick. This was heard in Port Control.
Mr. Chairman, executing the one-year lease renewal for wheelchair services at the airport, fully vetted and supported by the committee.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 105-2025 stands approved. Please sign on. Next ordinance is ordinance number 106-2025 by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to exercise the second option to renew contract number PS 2023-0167 with Recess Creative LLC to provide marketing, promotional, public relations, and advertising services, including materials, equipment, and supplies necessary to promote Cleveland Hopkins International Airport and Burke Lakefront Airport for the Department of Port Control. Director.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is another second option we are seeking authority to enter into. This one for contracted services with Recess Creative. They provide these various types of advertising, marketing type services for us in support of our staff at the airport. They administer many parts of our website, and they also, we have air services incentive program for marketing for air service. They also administer that program through this contract as well. We have been satisfied with their services and would like to continue utilizing them through this contract.
Thank you. Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is thoroughly vetted and supported by the committee. Question came up about internal staff. The assistant director noted that there was a vacancy in marketing internally that I believe they're in the process of filling, if that's correct. So that question did come up regarding internal staff capacity too, but this is significant added capacity to the marketing, as well as engages somewhat also in flight recruitment, airline recruitment as well. So this was vetted by the committee and supported.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other questions, ordinance
Mr. Chair.
number. Councilman
Just-
Hairston.
Just real brief. So this Recess Creative folks, so for example, when we get to the airport and you hear over the loudspeaker, you hear the recordings. Is that the group who does the recordings that play throughout the airport?
They're not solely responsible for it, but they do support that. So they provide, typically, they'll provide the talent, I'll say, for some of the voiceover folks that actually say the message. And so they'll support that, but then we have other contracts that like support the technical side of things for the voiceovers and everything like that too. So yes, they support it, but they're not fully responsible for it.
Gotcha. So when I go, I hear the mayor's voice, welcome to Cleveland, and his, I think it was his mother I heard as well. They did like a dual recording in the airport. And I was just wondering, who picks and, so this group picks and chooses who does these recordings, welcome to the airport. I'm just thinking, how do we get, if for example, Charlie Slife, right, who's the councilman who represents the airport area, or, if it's during Hispanic Heritage Month, our Councilwoman Santana may say a few words or speak and welcome people, or even our council president, right, having him on the recording, welcoming people into the Cleveland Hopkins Airport. How do we diversify those who are welcoming it and just giving positive messages to those who are entering the airport?
Chairman, if I just quickly can respond to that. I like the idea of Councilman Hairston to think even bigger of how we diversify that. I think we need to discuss that. But as a quick response, just so that the committee has directed the airport to make sure Councilwoman Santana's voice is going, updated, and present. And they have responded that they are going to follow through on that.
That's been up for some time. That's been going on for some time.
Yeah, but updating.
Oh, really? I haven't heard. Okay.
Yeah, but updating it, making sure. But I do like your point, Chairman, and I think we are, you are a chairman, in this case, Councilman, and thinking about other voices too, that we could incorporate, I think would make it really special. I think it's a really good point.
I think that's a great point.
That's really good, yeah.
And can you
But I wanted to let you know that
articulate
we've directed the department to ensure that Councilwoman Santana's voice is loud and clear in the airport.
Yes. Awesome.
And I agree with you. I know that Councilman Conwell, it's not an airport that I don't go to anymore to see if the music is playing and the band is playing. And I think that everybody on council brings a unique perspective or voice to welcome people into the city. I definitely want to make sure it's Santana, but I love Councilman Hairston's point that if we could diversify the messaging, and it could be any or all or whatever you decide, members of council, but if you could work with Councilman McCormick, I think that would be great. This is a partnership, and I think branding and everything needs to have just as much council as much as the administration, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman McCormick, if you could follow through on that, that'd be great. Great suggestion, Councilman Hairston.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions regarding ordinance number 106, 2025? Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 106, 2025 stands approved. The next ordinance is ordinance number 107-2025 by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into a triple net lease agreement with Prime Flight Aviation Services, Inc. to lease certain space located at building number 208 at 5851 Cargo Road at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport for office and storage space to support aviation ground handling operations and ground service equipment maintenance for various airlines at the airport for a term of 1 year with 4 one-year options to renew, exercisable by the Director of Port Control. Director.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this one is, I'll say, closely related to the previous Prime Flight piece that we just discussed a few minutes ago. Prime Flight, again, this is the same company. They have an existing space under one of the concourses at Cleveland Hopkins. Recently, one of the service providers for the airlines, the airlines chose to add capacity to Prime Flight here and removing one of their existing service providers and bringing on Prime Flight for more services for them. A handful of the airlines did that. And so what that facilitated was a need for Prime Flight to have more space at the airport, a greater footprint. And so they reached out to us looking to lease this building that we're talking here, Building 208. It's down in the South Campus area, right off of 237 on Cargo Road. So all of those services I described in the last piece, the maintenance and support services and baggage handling and all those kinds of things, same thing. They're just looking for additional space to provide those services to the airlines. So again, satisfied with their service, looking to expand our relationship with them, and seeking approval.
Thank you, Councilman McCormick.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as the Assistant Director noted, and this was vetted by the committee and supported.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 107-2025 stands approved. Next one is ordinance number 112-2025 by Council Members McCormick and Griffin. By departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into an amendment to LS 2024-0021 with Aircraft Service International, Inc., DBA Menzies Aviation, to add a provision for the location and repair of disabled vehicles. Director.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, so just a little background here. Menzies Aviation provides fueling services for many of the airlines, at direct fueling services for aircraft on the airfield. We have a relationship with Menzies for, again, just lease of space. That direct relationship for aircraft fueling is between the airlines and Menzies themselves. And so there has been a little bit of confusion with our agreement with Menzies on where it is appropriate to do certain types of maintenance and where they can and cannot do maintenance for different types of equipment. And so what this amendment is doing is seeking to clarify in their agreement where they can do different types of maintenance on their equipment on the airfield and otherwise. So seeking approval for said amendment.
Just one quick question before I turn it over to Councilman McCormick. Help me understand, how do you diversify your suppliers? Do you ever just really look at some of these services that you provide? Because I know that we don't have any, the minority and FB, MB, FB, and CSB on some of these because they're proprietary or whatever. How do you work to try to help find minority vendors or let people know what kind of certifications they have in order to bid and participate in some of this work?
Mr. Chairman, thanks. This particular activity, this particular scope of work is very limited. There's very few companies that do this type of particular service, fueling the aircraft out in the airfield. But your point is good, and for these types of services, again, the airlines hire this company directly for this. We are simply a landlord here to facilitate a place for them to do their operations. I mean, we do look to diversify our services any way we can, and our contractual lease relationships. But in this particular case, we don't have much say in choosing this particular vendor for these types of services.
And I know, and thank you for that clarification. I know that the airlines really are the ones that really make a lot of the investments in these kind of groups, as well as, which I want to commend, because United and I believe American have stayed committed to their DEI principles, where people are divesting because they see now they're not going to be made to do them. These folks have voluntarily done those. So I really just would hope that we're working with Director Mitchell in order to look at those so that there could be fairs and other things that could be done to say, hey, this may just be a matter of getting a certification. And if you get an 18-month certification and then able to bid or do some of these, then this is where we work with our private sector in order to try to make sure that there's programs to actually get young people in the city of Cleveland certified to do some of these things. I think we got to start doing better at showing where the opportunities are and training people for those opportunities for demand-driven jobs.
May I? Yeah. Thank you for bringing that point up too. And we have held a handful of job fairs throughout last year. We actually do have another one coming up March 11th for these job fairs that we have been holding in conjunction with OEO and Director Mitchell. They are for DPC for city jobs and for all of our partners at the airport. There's, airlines and concessions and everybody there represented. And, the last year, quite successful, jobs handed out on the spot. We provide, fingerprinting and the security background checks on the spot to help facilitate and not be a long process. And so March 11th is the next one at the airport, and we'll encourage anybody to come out who's looking for work at the airport.
Please forward it to the clerk. The clerk can in turn forward it to us and the staff, and we could push it out simultaneously on our own networks as well as council's joint network. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Any, Councilman McCormick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We reviewed and support this piece, and I just wanted to note too, I think, especially going in with the TMDP, Chair, to your point, we have a lot of opportunity to look at small business, minority business, female-owned business as a part of that project. And Councilman Slife and I actually attended a session in Atlanta during the National League of Cities where we learned a lot about what they're doing. And we could talk more in detail off of it, but it's not only incorporating, companies of different backgrounds, but it's also, Chair, to your point, Atlanta does a lot of work around handholding for folks that may need help understanding what that certificate is or what they might need to get done. So anyways, they've got a really great model. I know they're a huge airport, but learning kind of best practices from their model might be great, especially going into the TMDP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number, Councilman Conwell.
Statement was made about the purchasing and procurement that you mentioned earlier, and you mentioned that we don't have that much say. What about the purchasing and procurement with the city? I mean, because you have purchasing agents that can push what the president's talking about, helping out minority businesses and DEI. We could do that through the chair.
Through the chair to the council person, yeah, we did bring on last year a DEI coordinator for Department of Port Control, and we do work closely with our partners in OEO. I was just simply stating we don't have much say in some of the services that the airlines hire for in terms of aircraft support, right? So Menzies, what they do is they actually do the fueling of the aircraft themselves.
Right.
And so that's not an operation that
I get that part.
That
I get
city
that
would
part.
like to be
I'm talking
involved
about
in.
If we could, and make sure we run everything through
through
the
the
chair.
chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, through the chair.
Thank you.
I'm talking about us with purchasing and procurement, that we buy the light bulbs, we buy toilet paper, we do even ongoing maintenance at the airport that we can hire through DEI. We can do that through purchasing and procurement. And our officers, we can make sure that they do that. Our purchasing agents, we can make sure that they do it through the chair.
Through the chair to the council person, I 100% agree, and we strive for that on all the procurements and purchasing that we do.
And even Mr. President, we're spending billions of dollars to upgrade the airport. We got to make sure in those construction sites that we have DEI, that we do it, because it's our residents' taxpayer dollars.
Through the chair to the council person, absolutely, I agree. We are, as I mentioned, we brought on a DEI coordinator last year, and he is currently working on an inclusion plan for our upcoming TMDP. What he's been doing, to Councilman McCormick's point, what he's been doing is researching other airport terminal development programs around the country to see best practices and see what's been successful and what hasn't been successful. He's compiling all that information now, and we'll be here in the near future. I'll say we'll be doing some stakeholder engagement. Council be involved in that process as well in developing this inclusion plan for the upcoming terminal program.
Tyson is good. OEO mayor has he had a home run with him, because he'll dig in with that with Councilmember Zach Reed, former Councilmember Zach Reed. They'll dig into it, and then they'll let us know what's going on. He's pretty good.
Through the chair to the councilman, Director Mitchell has been involved to
good.
this point in our inclusion planning, yes.
All right, thank you, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Councilman. Appreciate it. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 112-2025 stands approved. Please sign on. And the last piece of legislation is ordinance number 121-2025 by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend title and sections 1, 4, and 5 of ordinance number 1365-2023 passed December 4, 2023, and to supplement the ordinance by adding new section 4A relating to the FY24 and FY25 airport capital improvement plan. Director.
Through the chair, or I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. So this piece has to do with our ongoing capital improvement plan that we collaborate with the FAA. So every year we provide to them a capital improvement plan for different projects that we are seeking federal grant funding for. And, for that, every couple years, I'll say, we come in front of this body with a piece of legislation that has an approval for a number of projects that we want to move forward because we believe we're going to get federal grant funding. And so, because we want to make sure we get that approval from this body up front to make sure that we can, in a timely manner, execute our grants, because they sometimes come with some very tight timelines in terms of submitting grant applications and then actually executing the grants. And so this piece came before the body back in 2023 because that was our list of projects at the time that we were seeking federal funding. Since that time, through ongoing, evolving discussions with the FAA, 2 new projects have been added to that list. Which is a good thing, additional FAA grant funding. One being this Taxiway Victor Extension project, which is a taxiway project on the west side of the airfield that will facilitate some hangar development on that side of the airfield. And then the second project that has been added to the list is our wildlife fence reconstruction project. This is a project to reconstruct the entire perimeter fence around the airport to get it up to all the necessary standards, and it is some aged infrastructure, so replacing it is a good thing. We've had a lot of good conversations with our partners at the FAA, and we are pushing forward to get a grant for these 2 projects. And so seeking approval from this body to enter into contracts for those projects if the grant funding does become available.
All right, thank you. Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was reviewed by the committee, full support. We discussed the importance of the perimeter fence, as well as some of the other items in the cost sheet here. And as a reminder, just in general, the local match and the dollars locally are from the airport funds, which are not local tax dollars. Those are not City of Cleveland local tax dollars. Those funds are generated through the airlines themselves. So just wanted to reiterate that. But we reviewed and support this legislation.
Thank you. Councilman Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the Assistant Director, I'm fully supportive of this. I just have a question regarding the fence, the wildlife fence. That's a lot of fence, and it's encumbered by barbed wire, which makes it look institutional. Could any of that be decorative in any way, or put in a way where it could be muraled or anything like that, or does it have to be see-through? Or I'm just thinking Brook Park Road is all fencing right on the south side. I'm just asking the question.
Through the chair to the council person. So we have broached that subject with our partners at the FAA. Anything that we would want to do that would be decorative or outside of the FAA standards would have to be funded with local dollars. There are a few locations that we identified that we may want to have more decorative fencing than the traditional chain link and the traditional FAA standard. And so what we're going to do in this bid, we're going to put an alternate item for some decorative fencing. So if funding is available and we would be able to fund some of those certain areas, we would like to do the decorative fencing funded with airport dollars for those areas.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Casey. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 121-2025 stands approved. And don't I believe congratulations is in order? Didn't you guys get a good ranking on, tell us about the ranking that you got? That the hot spot to catch a date, from what I understand?
That's what I've heard. To be honest with you, Councilman, I'm not that familiar with that particular survey, but I did see it in the paper, and we'll take it. Any kind of good press, we'll take.
I was going to make a joke. I wonder if they fell in love after they left the bathroom. No, but it is very interesting. But congratulations for whatever.
Thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other legislation, this Committee of Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is called to adjourn until the next meeting. Thank you. Have a good one.